Okay, so this is Metamorphic technique. And basically, Metamorphic technique is a tool for transformation, basically to self-empower the person who is receiving the technique. It's not a therapy. We make no claims, but basically what we're doing is contacting the innate intelligence of the body to make the shifts and changes that it needs to make in its own time and space. So we work in a detached manner, but that doesn't mean an uncaring manner. We're the catalyst, as it were, for the changes that can take place within the person receiving the technique. Just like the earth is a catalyst for the seed. The earth doesn't give to the seed takes from the earth, basically. And any changes that are made are usually permanent. So the butterfly was once the caterpillar, and then it becomes a chrysalis, and once it becomes a butterfly, it will never be a caterpillar again. So that's how transformation is made.
Right, hence the metamorphic technique.
Hence the metamorphic technique. And it was derived from the work of Robert St. John, who was a British naturopath in the 1960s. And what St. John found was that he was treating symptoms that his patients were coming to him with, and he was treating the symptoms, and the symptoms would often go away, but then they would return, or something new would take its place. So he realised that he wasn't getting to the root of the cause of the problem. And he, from his work as a naturopath, he then went on to explore reflexology. And from reflexology, he realised that he could access the whole of the body just by working the spinal reflexes of the foot. And that's this area right here. So this area here represents the foot. And the hip area
represents the spine.
The spine. Did I say the foot? Good. Cut that. So we're actually working on the spinal reflexes of the body. And what happened was that St. John realised that when he was working on these spinal reflexes, that he was actually accessing the 9 months in the womb.
Right.
So from that he then realised that the patterns that we set up in our lives are actually learnt, as it were, in the womb. And quite often a mother will have perhaps an emotional trauma or a physical trauma of some kind, and that creates a tension in the womb. So that tension in the womb is then transferred to the child. And the point at which that tension was experienced will then shape our experience through life. So for instance, this area here is conception, the conception point, and represents the father principle. So perhaps there's a problem with father or authority, and that could be our own authority over ourselves.
Can you start to diagnose by feeling feet?
We don't diagnose.
Don't diagnose.
We don't diagnose
Okay.
at all.
Yeah.
But amazing changes have been shown to take place within the individual. Basically, people come when they're at a crossroads in their life. Maybe there's been a death in the family, there's a bereavement, perhaps they're stuck as far as they want to change their job and they don't know what they want to do. Changes need to be made, but they just don't know what that change is. And they come for a session, and quite often what we find is that the job is changed, the relationship's changed, the house has changed, someone's moved on, they no longer think the way they used to think, and these changes have been affected at very, very deep levels. So we work for 20 minutes on each foot. We'll go over to the left foot. And basically we start just by feeling the foot. We're not looking at anything in particular. This is something to keep our inquiring mind occupied, because the brain likes to have something to sort of think about. Again, we don't diagnose, we can observe what's going on. And then again we start to work the spinal reflex. So it's a transformational tool. So what St John found was that as he was working with the feet, when he really found that he was onto something, was when a lady brought a 6-week-old child to see him with Down syndrome, and St John showed the mother how to work the feet with this technique, and they went home and the child received the technique from the mother and the father, I believe, and they would see Robert St John once a week and he would give them a treatment, and over the space of a year the child moved out of the pattern of Down syndrome. So we don't look at things as symptoms. Even though we don't diagnose, we don't look at anything as a symptom. We say that you're perfect just the way you are in this moment, but that there's always a potential to be something more, whatever that potential may be. And so St John actually looked at Down syndrome and autism as being two extreme tension patterns that were set up in the womb. And a lot of work has actually been done with children and older people also with mental and learning difficulties and disabilities. And what we find is that we start to loosen these patterns as we're working along this spinal reflex. These patterns are loosened and these people are able to move out of these patterns of tension.
So literally, a Down syndrome person was no longer Down syndrome?
Probably still had the chromosome,
Yeah.
but did not exhibit the pattern of
Right.
Downs. So again, we make no claims. It's a tension pattern. We look at these all symptoms as patterns, and patterns can be transcended.
So everyone should learn how to do this for their child?
Everyone should learn how to do it, yeah. It's very, you can see how simple it is. I'll do it again with this foot
yes,
here.
Yes.
It's very, very simple. Some people will use a vibration, maybe more of a stroking. I tend to use this sort of circular movement right here. It's something that can be very easily taught and used. A mother or father can give it to their child. What we do say is that on occasion a session is received from somebody outside the family unit because an energetic circuit can be built up between the family. And quite often we're dissolving patterns. For instance, you might be born into a family that says we don't do anger, for example. And so you grow up through life not expressing yourself or what would be considered anger, perhaps, by your parents. And so what happens is it's constantly repressed.
Yeah.
So you receive a metamorphic technique and all of a sudden you just can't help yourself. It comes out. But
Right.
what happens is by expressing yourself how you want to, you're actually releasing energy, you're releasing repressive feelings. And quite often what happens is that everything else and everyone else around you will change also. So the environment around you will change as you change. Because now you're expressing yourself on a different level. It becomes a different resonance. We're coming into relationship with everything around us. And as we come into relationship with things, everything else comes into relationship with us. So we do 20 minutes on each foot, basically. The feet are the most important because they are the grounding part of us. And then we move to the hands. So we do 20 minutes on each foot, 5 minutes on each hand. And again, this represents the spinal reflex along the thumb here
Let me just...
and across the wrist.
We can't do this.